Our final presentation for today is the brand architecture work led by the creative team at YummyColours for Afterpay, a leading fintech startup. Please welcome Diego Marini, co-founder and creative director of YummyColours, Connie Liu, creative director, YummyColours, and Geoff Seeley, chief marketing officer of Afterpay.
Hi, everyone. I'm Diego of YummyColours, and I want to introduce the other two in this room. Connie, you go first,
Sure.
and after we can talk a quick second about YummyColours.
Sure. I'm Connie, and I am a creative director at YummyColours. I was also the design lead on this rebrand with Geoff and Diego. So Geoff.
Hey everybody, nice to be here. My name's Geoff Seeley. I'm the Global Chief Marketing Officer at Afterpay.
Yeah, and so a quick introduction about YummyColours before we dive into the long journey and the process behind this collaboration. So YummyColours is a brand design studio that has offices, or as we say now, locations in New York and Copenhagen. Our mission is very simple yet very ambitious, to turn ideas into colorful impact. And by impact, we talk about the impact that we do with our clients and collaborators, as well as our responsibility as designers to bring not just a beautiful work to the table, but as also a thoughtful and a thoughtful process around what type of work we want to bring into society and what type of work we want to bring into the world as final results. So the impact is something to better the communication for our clients and for the society around sustainability, human, how do we treat humans, how do we integrate representation, and so on. So I give it back to Connie so we can dive into this idea and this fantastic project we did.
Thank you. And thank you first AIGA for having us. And we're really excited to share our process on this rebrand of Afterpay with you. So before we dive in, actually, for those who don't know or are familiar with what Afterpay is, maybe Geoff, can you just give an overview of tell people what Afterpay is?
Sure. So Afterpay is first off, it's a 6-year-old Australian-born business, and we provide a payment solution which has been embraced at significant scale by millennials and Gen Zs. We offer our customers the ability to buy the things that they love and are going to be shopping for, but then split the payments out over a period of time. So you can buy a pair of sneakers for $100 and you pay $25 on the day that you buy it, and then you split the other 3 payments out over a 6-week period. So you pay back $25 every 2 weeks. It's interest-free. There are no fees, presuming that you will pay back on time. And we're funded by the merchants. So we enable people to budget much better. It's a great product to help with cash flow and budgeting. And that's in a nutshell is what Afterpay is. Yeah,
that's great. Now that we all know what Afterpay is, I'm going to set up the project by telling you how it's all started. As Geoff mentioned, while Afterpay started in Australia, it was growing very rapidly around the world. So we met Afterpay at a really, really exciting moment of the company. And because it was growing so fast, there was a really huge need and opportunity for us to define and distinguish the brand in a powerful way. So Nick Molnar, who is the founder of Afterpay, happened to be in New York. And Diego and I somehow landed a breakfast with Nick to discuss the rebrand. And after much back and forth, we kicked off the project with the global leadership team in San Francisco. We always start our branding projects with an in-depth workshop with the major stakeholders, because it's really important for us to understand their objectives of a rebrand and their goals for the actual rebrand. But also, it's very important to hear firsthand each person's vision of it. So again, we got to know each other. We did a workshop. We talked about everybody's needs. Of course, talked about making the brand identity cohesive and consistent globally, because it was becoming a really massive global brand. And of course, a big side note, Afterpay was the momentum it was going. We didn't even have Geoff yet on board. So a day later, long story short, Diego and I flew back to New York in the middle of a big storm in the Northeast. It delayed our flight, and we spent a terrible night on the floor of the Syracuse airport. And Diego actually had a fever of 102 degrees. This is a very memorable moment of getting the project started and really excited, and it was like a funny moment. But I digress. Back to the workshop. It was a really deep dive into understanding what the brand's perception was in each market. Again, we said it was in Australia, and in Australia, you can pay for anything, whether it's for clothes, for your dentist, for anything really. And as it entered the US and other markets, it was really important to strategically what verticals that they were focusing in. And in the US was, as they were entering the market, was very much focused on fashion, beauty, and wellness. So really important things to keep in mind that we learned about. And some major takeaways from that workshop was, and you'll see what we learned about in the workshop really informed what decisions we were making as we were crafting the visual identity. So one of the major takeaways is that the competitiveness of the buy now, pay later landscape. There was a lot of players coming into this. The relationship and the role that Afterpay has with its merchants and its customers, the equity of the existing identity Afterpay has in Australia and New Zealand and the UK is really important, because they've been established for much longer, and everybody knows the Afterpay brand in these regions. The next thing is the importance of the Afterpay badge on the product detail pages on the merchants, right? So that is going to be a really interesting point and learning that you will see as we talk about the color in the color choice. And the last thing is, we have a lot of learnings, but these were really major points, is the unique and sincere love that customers have for Afterpay. It was just overwhelming when we were doing research and looking at all of their channels and people just asking for merchants to have Afterpay so that they can buy what they want. So after these learnings, with these learnings, I would say, we began to really dive into designing the new identity. And of course, without overhauling the logo lockup because of the equity we talked about, we take the logo or arrows, which didn't have much of a story, and we rotated them, linked them together into a continuous shape to create the Afterpay loop. This was because we kept hearing from leadership and when in the workshop and everybody that we talked to at Afterpay that Afterpay was the connection between the merchants and the customers. So the story of the logo now becomes the representation of these relationships, and these relationships are really continually strengthen each time they interact with each other. So that became the storytelling in the change of the logo and the evolution of the logo. And I'm going to try to go fast because we want to get to the meat of this. But we dove deep into the foundation work for the brand, which included the company's mission, vision, its brand values, its personality, and started to design the elements. And you see some these are some old like sketches of early on logos that we were doing. And this was about 6 months in when we got the news that a global CMO is joining Afterpay. And we were extremely thrilled because, to kind of like have someone lead and push us in this rebrand for rollout. But we were also so terrified. Why were we so scared? Because if any of you have been in this industry as long as Diego and I have, knows what this could mean, right? Like a new CMO coming on board to a big company could mean that they could fire you and bring on their own team and either overhaul or completely do away with the project.
Connie, I'm a very scary person, you know that.
Very
so
scary.
That's exactly
very
what
scary.
was on my mind when I landed.
But exactly, and we were in a panic mode, and so Diego goes to take this last flight before pandemic lockdown, printed a whole stack of everything, brought all the work that we've done to date to catch Geoff up to speed, right? So we're at the end, we were so grateful that Geoff didn't fire us, and instead, of course, just pushed us full steam ahead, and with the ambition to launch a full global rebrand during a pandemic. So actually, Geoff, we like to know, because we never even talked about this, like what was your first meeting with us, and how did you feel? What was your take on this? Like, oh, I'm jumping into the middle of a rebrand, and I didn't hire this agency, and I had to take over.
The first thing was, of course, I'm going to fire everybody. No, it wasn't. Look, I mean, I was new in the job. Lockdown was about to hit us, so I knew that we had to build a personal relationship really fast. This was only going to work if there was mutual trust on both sides between me as a client and you guys as our design partners in this. And so, it was probably my first or second day. I called Diego and said, I don't know what's going on, but get on a plane and come over. And we spent a great day together, and we downloaded and we crushed stuff around. It was from the first 5 minutes that this was a relationship that was going to work. That you guys, Diego was someone who was collaborative in the process of design rather than dictatorial, and I think that's really important, certainly with a company like ours that is still trying to find its feet and its meaning. And so you flew back after whatever, a day, it may even have been less than a day, and I think we're all in a good spot. But I think my job was to make sure not to stop and throw everything out, because that doesn't help anybody. You got to move forward and execute. And I was prepared to iterate as much as we needed to, but we were in a good spot. So it was you made it easy for me.
Amazing. Yeah. So I mean, like that just started the whole relationship, and we had set up weekly meetings and made decisions really, really quickly on like how the identity comes to life. Like we finalized the logo, we had those sketches that you saw earlier, in testing, and with Geoff is like, we need to make it a little bit bolder, all those details. He was like very much involved in all the decisions, all the design detailed decisions that we were working on. So yeah, like we finalized the logo, the typography, and the color palette. So let's talk about color, because I think everybody is really excited about the Afterpay mint color. And I've done enough talking, so I'll pass it to Diego to talk about the process in coming up with the color.
And before we enter into the color, I think also Geoff did a great job in take ownership of the process, right? And like spearheaded these things that until then it was like, a little bit owned by so many people, and they took that responsibility to go full steam ahead with that. And this also influenced the idea of the colors. So when we start this process, again, long research, deep research about like older competitors, and not only we discover a lot of like, and we analyze each competitors by how they market themselves, how they message themselves, what kind of visual identity they have, what kind of visual content they create, but also we start creating this map of like, looking out on what color do they use. And one of their main competitors is Klarna, so is heavily rely on this pink, and everybody else, or the majority, is in this blue, very financial, very corporate world. And so while looking at this, we discovered like two particular spots that they were like not very much utilized by fintechs and buy now pay later services. And so this white space was like the yellow and the mint. And again, through Geoff leadership, as well as like, through survey, we realize that we need to make a decision, and we need to make something that is like, what are we choosing? So we started researching about like, both colors, and mint came up really strongly with the millennial and Gen Z customers, and the idea, but also in the trend of the moment, right? Like the idea of like, that is represented in fashion, represented in other interior design, etc. So it was very much in line with what our verticals, beauty and fashion. And as well, we discovered another problem. Yeah, the yellow in Australia is very related to the Commonwealth Bank. That is one of the largest Australian bank. And so it was creating a problem of identity for us. But not only these two were like, still doubts that the company and ourselves have had. So we relied on survey, and we surveyed 2,000 people between Australia and US. And it was very much like 68% of Gen Z said yes to the mint, and 56% of millennial said yes to the mint. So strong of this like decision made by our consumer, and so everybody that was surveyed was a customer or knew about Afterpay. We move strongly with the mint. The story about the mint. So again, Geoff like pushed us to create the develop a custom color called Afterpay Bondi Mint with Pantone. The reason are a lot why we did that. Like one was owning a space like that none of the like very little of their like competitors had. So owning a color. Owning a named color. Afterpay Bondi Mint is very much related to Bondi is a beach in Sydney, in near Sydney. So it's a very near and dear and famous place in Australia. So again, we tie back to the roots of the Australian origin. The last element that we needed, it was something like, this is a fun screenshot that Connie took. Like, how do you choose a color during a pandemic, where Geoff was in San Francisco, we were in New York, and we had to ship from Pantone chips. So we had both chips, and we were looking and discussing on a screen how to, what is the shade, the right shade of the right color. So again, pandemic troubleshooting, right? So we could have been in the same office looking at the same color, but we made it, and that was like the most important part. So the other element that was like, remember at the beginning, the importance of the Afterpay presence on a PDP page. If you can look at it, it's these tiny little things. And actually we'll learn later that is 100 pixel by 22 pixel. So when Nick Molnar, the CEO and founder of like Afterpay, briefed us, the first things is that it needs to work at that size, right? So I don't care about what the logo looks like, it needs to work at that size. And the more we were thinking, the more we were saying, it's almost impossible to make a logo that has the name and a symbol impactful at that size. So our solution when we started thinking about it was like the only things that it can be memorable at the like customer experience. And imagine you never met Afterpay, you never use Afterpay, so you want to know and click and try to understand what it is by start seeing this mint color everywhere. Think about, Geoff, how many brands do you have like in your portfolio? Like in
so we have more than 85,000 merchants now who we work with, and more than 25 million customers who now use the service.
Exactly. So imagine that you see like, these little mint badge and mint shape in, you go into different customer, into different shopping experience, and you keep seeing these mint elements, right? Mint element. So all of a sudden you want to click on it and you want to understand what it is a little bit more, if not for using it, at least just for curiosity. So our task, in creating this custom color was based on this tiny real estate that we have. And after, it grew upon every other brand touch base. The funny story also now that we're start working with brands that use Afterpay on their platform. So we are rebranding brands, and we have our little logo on their product landing page. Anyway, so at launch, that creates like an incredible love for the brand. And again, as you know, a lot of the time when you do a relaunch of a brand at this size, you have like 50-50 chance of love-hate, right? Like, customers that love the old one, they don't recognize the new one, etc. But when we launched on August 4th last year, 2020, a lot of the love poured onto the brand because of the mint, right? And these were some of the assets that we created for the launch when Pantene Afterpay announced this custom color creation. And that fast forward in nowadays, they Afterpay, and Geoff, correct me if I'm wrong, create like an Afterpay ice cream, that is called Bondi Mint. Like people are still a year later loving this color, reacting to this color, and started recognizing this color in the global communication that we did. That Afterpay is doing and rolling it out, like really seamlessly throughout. So these are some of the examples that we create for them into that part. And now we enter into this idea of like, think about it. Like we didn't just create a logo and just create like a beautiful symbol and a color, like we work internally with almost every department. We work with sales, we work with marketing, we work with product design, we work with HR, we did some visual merchandisers, we did web integration. Without joking, I think we produced something around 500 and 600 pages of style guide for different elements. So we really went in depth, like, locally, US and globally in Australia and UK, and spoke with social media department, spoke with sales department, and really understood what happened and what the needs were from Afterpay perspective. As you can see, this is a quick example on what we created for them from a visual identity perspective, guidelines, icons, this typography system that now, I encourage everybody to start seeing, and is our proud, but also the testament that, like, you know, this identity system works. If you look on different channel, the Australian Instagram for Afterpay, the US Instagram for Afterpay, the UK Instagram is called ClearPay in UK for legal reason. But if you start looking at the older channel, the newsletter, the website just relaunched right now after product team made a great job, like in integrating all these elements, you start seeing that the global presence of Afterpay now is cohesive, you know, and is all through all these elements, from typography, the colors, elements of animated details that we developed together, and a system to create, you know, like different layouts around digital advertising and like other elements of like communication. As you notice, every time that you see the Afterpay logo is over a mint background, right? This idea that hopefully in a couple of years, when you see the mint without the logo, you don't even need to know that it's like Afterpay. You remember that it's like, oh, this is the Afterpay mint, right? Like Bondi mint. So more example and more ideas on how that came to life into Afterpay and after we launch. And I wanted to hear like about, like, you know, Geoff spearheaded this for like 6 months from March to August, and after we passed, you know, the baby to Afterpay. And I want to hear from like I want you to hear from Geoff how this rebranding impacted their work and their like communication and marketing and brand perception.
Sure. The first thing I guess I'd say is how, you know, think back to where we all were last sort of July, August. I think we'd all gone into lockdown in various times around the springtime in the Northern Hemisphere, so sort of Feb, March. We're all promised this will all blow through, we'll be done by June. And then it wasn't. And so like many people on this call and around the world, people were getting pretty antsy and morale was tough. We were all stuck in these screens at home. And so I think the first thing I would say is, we still are stuck at these screens at home, I might add. But the first thing I'd say is just how galvanizing this was internally for the business. This is a company that had grown through incredible product market fit, through a service that people loved. And for us to be able to realize this identity that actually really resonated with our people, the 1,400 people who work at Afterpay, was almost the most meaningful thing about this. People kind of found identity for themselves. They had something really positive to anchor onto. They all got a hoodie, and who doesn't want a hoodie? Turns out in the middle of summer in Northern California, you don't really want a hoodie. I learned that. It's bloody hot. So it's a really galvanizing thing for the company. It also gave us momentum with the conversations that we have with our merchant partners. It gave us fantastic news because we had something that we were super proud of, that we knew was going to drive business impact for them. And we've seen the difference in having a consistent presence on the merchant side with regards how it impacts on their business. So there was the internal galvanizing force in a very trying moment in time for the business, something for the company employees to be proud of. There was a commercial impact with regards the conversations that we could have with our merchants and the impact that we saw there. And then it gave us a launch pad from which to be far more expansive and confident in our external communications with our consumers, with our customer base. And as I say, we have, tens of millions of customers now, but they're Gen Z, they're millennial, they're predominantly sort of 30-year-old females who shop fashion. As I say, we're in 85,000 merchants worldwide, more than 85,000, super heavy in fashion and beauty and that space. So we had an identity that they could start to attach to, that they could start to bond with. And I think that the illuminating slide for me that Diego showed me when we first started speaking was that just that competitive spectrum, and how many of these brands in fintech are kind of blue and black. And I think it just points to perhaps the demographic of founders of fintech businesses as much as anything. And so we actually had a brand that reflected the customer that we were serving, and a brand identity that reflected that. So it had myriad upside to the work.
Can you talk about a little bit like how the cohesive and unified identity impact the business from like a merchant's recognizability as well as like legacy, or more like in-depth part?
Yeah, I think you kind of got evidence of it here, and these are obviously just the product display pages that you're seeing here. But our ability to present our company to merchants in a far more confident and consistent way that was representative of our customer, that was an essential part of doing this. And so in Australia in particular right now, but increasingly in the US, as our in-store presence rolls out, we've got visual merchandise assets that the brands we work with, and we work with the leading fashion and beauty brands in the world, are super proud to put in their displays, super proud to put next to their point of sale and in their windows, because it reflects who they are as much as who we are. And that's back to the whole story of the loop. Our job is to bring the customer and the merchant closer together, and that we do that in an ever more unifying way. And so our ability to weave that magic between the customer and the merchant is what we're here to do. So again, it ticked a lot of boxes there.
Amazing. And we had so much fun because everybody, for this reason of like, to your point, everybody was exciting. Afterpay was growing internally. Afterpay was this like, this breath of fresh air. We were like able to have fun with like elements like this. We designed a pair of socks for the like the sales representative. We designed stickers. We designed like pins. So, and after I think like and I don't want to take we don't want to take like the ownership, but I feel now you start making even more impactful partnership, right? The London Fashion Week, now this week is like you are presenting New York Fashion Week. So again, it's like this partnership that again is not because of the logo, of course, because you are a great company, but I feel
no, it
like
is Diego. It's exactly because of the logo. That's exactly.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, great. That's can we reuse this? Not like this is great. The idea is like again the big company, but again this like a cohesive viewership. Like it's nice to see. This was a booth that like a partner like of Afterpay did in Australia, but it was like actually we are like contacting them on LinkedIn and congratulate how they use like the visual identity and the elements, because it was stunning how like they interpreted that, and it became like something we're talking to them right now, and it's really beautiful. Become like also a connection for us with other creative around the world, to see how they reinterpreted the word of the brand identity and the work of the brand identity and the work around other places. It makes us really, really proud and happy to see that we succeeded to create. And this is like the last slide before we go into like Q&A, but it's like like when Geoff was telling us, and we did an ice cream, I was like, yes, this is like like the ultimate, as an Italian as well, the ultimate compliment, that a color become an ice cream. George, I guess like if there are any question from the audience, we can deep dive into.
Of
something.
course, you leave this on the last screen. Now you make us all hungry, right? with an ice cream as the last thing, right?
Exactly.
Now I have to go get I have to go somewhere and just get like a mint chocolate chip something somewhere after we leave. Thank you all so much. I think I really want to first, congratulate you all on sharing the hesitation and the honesty about talking with a new company lead, right? When Geoff comes in and kind of like, are we going to be here? Are we going to move? And asking on this conference, like, Geoff, what was your, interpretation of where we stand, right? Because we know as business people, that is a shaky situation, right? We don't know if the new people want to shake something up or they're kind of understanding, what we were intending. But I think, the collaboration and working through, and especially that looks like that session with Diego, like, just come here for a couple of hours and let's work something out, just kind of solidified that, the relationships is really one of the things that drive this ability. So as a global brand with multiple touch points and a 100 by 22, pixel, window, how difficult was that rollout to get this new Bondi mint on, like, plastered everywhere? Like,
look, not easy. That's a great observation, because not every integration is the same with every merchant. And so this was a design exercise, but this was also a change exercise and a relationship management exercise for us, between us and our merchant partners. So there is a huge army at Afterpay who facilitated this, and often it was literally merchant by merchant getting on the phone. We've got these, we're going to go through this process. We want you on the journey. But yeah, the work speaks for itself. As I always say, you can show people, 200 PowerPoint slides of your strategy, but you show them one nice piece of creative work and they're in. And that's kind of what happened. Everyone sees it, you get it, and you don't need to explain much more, because it helps our business, it helps their business. So yeah, it was an effort, a huge technical effort as much as anything else. But it was a worthwhile.
Awesome. I think I want to get Diego that little clip of Geoff saying it was the logo. We're going to get that for it's an important moment, an important milestone. And but then Geoff also mentions showing the spectrum of where fintech brands land on this color wheel, right? And noticing that there is an empty space, right? When we're designers, we're thinking about the empty space as the opportunity, right? You're so used to Amex and PayPal and them kind of owning this idea of blue or shades of blue, and then figuring out that there's this nice little, section that nobody's hitting, right? So you make a color Afterpay Bondi mint, and you work with Pantone, like the things that we all just work with and have fans in our room, in our offices and everything. How cool! And can you tell us a little bit more of like working with Pantone on creating this?
I think we hit it on several elements, right? Our name is YummyColours. We have to create a bespoke color with Pantone, right? Like, I think, like, what else do we want? So I think, we had work with Pantone in the past, creating a couple of campaigns. So we have like a little bit like of a familiarity with our team. So it was an easier reach. And because we did this campaign in the past, we knew that possibility was like, at our hand. It was easy, easier. Like, we knew already a little bit the inside of Pantone. So we called them and we say, remember when you told us the story about the Jay-Z blue, the Tiffany, the Minions yellow, like back in the days? Guess what? We're doing one now for, one of our clients. So it was, again, like, we know Laurie Pressman of the Color Institute. So it was, again, an easier contact. It wasn't starting from scratch. They knew what we were talking about. They knew what we needed, and we knew how they were operating. So it was kind of an easier way, and again, think about this, the idea was to go to their facilities, amazing facilities, to create this bespoke color full of pandemic. So we have to do this remotely, that just by trying to get them to create this. So it was really like interesting and somehow easy.
and somehow easy. Well, it seems like the relationship obviously with Pantone, and I would love to see that behind the scenes of just like mixing colors and the paints and which mixes you go. But now as we kind of want to wrap up, what's the next relationship for Afterpay and YummyColours? What are we focusing on next?
There's we're growing as a business into new spaces. We have new products that we are releasing. We have new audiences that as our business expands and people see the value of the service that we provide. So there's a whole bunch of conversations that are up for grabs. So
but I would say
we got a ton of work to do.
The list that we got on top of beautiful branding is the relationship that we have with Geoff, Nick, and all the other people at Afterpay that is still beyond working together again. I call Geoff for mentorship and advice. I can send an email to Nick Molnar, that's one of the most influential people in Australia, by sending an article. This relationship, I think, is even beyond keep working or just a professional relationship, are more important for us than the project by project elements.
That's great.
I think that, I'm just going to add to that, George, if I may, because I think you go through sort of big moments in a business, and I think I'll ruin a quote that I heard about the pandemic, but we went through 10 years in 10 weeks going through this process, and you remember the people that you're with when you're on those sorts of fast journeys. And as I say, I think that the thing that got us through this, bearing in mind all of this happened when we'd only ever, Connie, I've still never met you, to be quite honest with you. That we will change that, and maybe we'll do that at your Fashion Week in September.
Yeah.
Diego, I've met you once. This all happened in pandemic, and so I go back to that point earlier. Being able to work with people who you trust, who you like, and are going to collaborate. The power of that gets you the outcome that you want. Never more so than when you are under the pressure of an entirely different new sort of societal dynamic that we had.
Very well said. Very well said. Thank you, Geoff. What a fantastic way to end today's sessions. Thank you so much, Connie, Diego, and Geoff. I've been learning so much with each conversation, and I hope you are too. It really reinforces that relationships with our clients are so vital to making projects successful. Thank you for all our guests for being here and sharing their process and behind the scenes of each project.